And today, as mentioned, we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 Business Voice. So to start with, let's talk about what most people are doing in business calling today. So if you're not using Microsoft Voice or a, well-known or established web-based or internet-based phone system, most people have a situation today where their calling is tied to their desk phone or the cell phone, and the two systems don't usually know about each other. So your cell phone is usually a separate phone number from your desk phone. If you want to be able to receive a phone call on your cell phone, you're usually going to have a receptionist or someone in the organization transfer that call from your regular phone system to your mobile phone if you're out of the office. And you might have multiple applications involved in what you are doing for any type of collaboration or working with other people over computer or over different voice-based services. Likely you have an on-premise PBX today, or a small phone system. You may not know much about your PBX, but it's there sitting in the back and your phones are connected to it, and that's how you're talking to people. And you're likely going to have different vendors involved. You're going to be getting your phone system from one vendor, the PBX, the support likely from that vendor, but then you may be getting your phone line connectivity from another vendor. You may have another vendor involved in supporting your overall environment. And then if you are using meeting applications or collaboration applications such as Teams, then you're dealing with a different vendor and potentially different support for those applications as well. Let's look at a traditional telephone system today. So we have the physical desk phones, usually connected to a PBX that's on site in your building or your location somewhere. And the endpoints are traditional phones. Again, you may be forwarding to a cell phone. And then you have a phone line connecting you to the phone company. Usually those are going to be either analog phone lines like we all had running into our houses for years. It could be a PRI line, which is a more advanced version of an analog phone line, or it could be a SIP trunk, which is a newer technology for phone line connectivity. And of course, if you're using cell phones, then you're going to be using the cellular network to connect your phone. The phone company is then connected to the public switch telephone network. That's the telephone wires that run through all over the ground, under the ocean, between continents, uplink and download to satellites. And that's the traditional way that we've done 10-digit dialing in North America, and then, larger number digit dialing when we call internationally. So that public switch telephone network was what's been providing telephone connectivity throughout the world for over 100 years now. But people are changing, and the way people want to work are changing. And this was taking place even before the events of the last year plus that we've experienced. Collaboration is increasing. More and more employees collaborate and work together to get their work done. Social networking is increasing, and more people use more devices per day because of how they interact with their applications. The device is becoming less critical to the user, and the application is becoming more important to the user. So they may have a desktop, a laptop, a mobile phone, and a tablet. They may have one of those devices. They may have more, but they want a similar experience across all of those devices, no matter what it is they're doing. This statistic is actually pre-COVID-19, and it was a perception that 72% of workers will be working remotely by 2020. And with COVID-19, we all went through a lot of remote work scenarios in our environments and got to understand what remote working really meant and saw the limitations potentially of some of the tools and services that you have today compared to the tools and services that you would want to sustain a remote workplace. And we have a multi-generational workforce. Not everyone's ready for all of the new applications, all of the new tools, and all of the new technology, or able or ready to adapt and adopt it at the same rate that the people that have more of a passion for technology might be ready to adopt it at. So we need to make sure that we can have a workplace that accommodates that as well. So when we apply that information to business calling, and we talk about business calling reinvented, we see that we go from a traditional desk phone to an application that runs on a multitude of different types of devices. That application can run on a dedicated desk phone. It can run on a PC. It can run on a Mac. It can run on an Android or a Apple tablet. It can run on an Android or an Apple or a Windows mobile device. It can really run on just about any kind of device you need and give you the same experience across those different devices. Because it's that one application, you're not dealing with multiple apps. You don't have to learn how to use one app for your telephone and one app for your meetings or calling options that are computer-based. We go away from having an on-premise PBX and the maintenance costs that go with that to a cloud-based phone system that's more reliable, has built-in redundancy, and in the long run actually costs less money because there's not a significant upfront replacement cost on a regular basis that a typical PBX and the phones are going to have. And we go from multi-vendor complexity to single provider simplicity. When you get Microsoft Business Voice through Broadview, likely you're already doing Office 365 or Microsoft 365 services with us. And if you're not, that's perfectly fine. Then you can continue to deal with whoever you are for your Microsoft 365 services, and we can provide your Business Voice services. But usually it's all brought under one single provider. So it's Broadview Networks and Microsoft together, and we become your primary line of support. And then through that, we have access to Microsoft for any issues that may come up with any of the services. So the anatomy of the Microsoft phone system is a little bit different. In this case, instead of a telephone, we have an application. And that application is what the user is using to make and receive telephone calls. In the case of the Microsoft world, that application is Teams. So it's also the application you might be using to access files, the application you're using to complete meetings with other people, the application you're using for chatting with coworkers. It's the same application. And again, that application runs on multiple devices. Then you connect over the internet to Microsoft's hosted phone system. So they're running a large-scale PBX, it's a function of Teams, in the cloud, and you don't really worry about that back end. You do some minor configuration now and then, but other than that, it just sits there and runs all the time. Like I mentioned, there's multiple data centers in Canada. There's redundancy across those data centers, and then those data centers are connected to the public switch telephone network. So that's how the phone calls get either from your application out to someone else you're phoning, or if someone else is phoning you, from their telephone through to the application that you are using. So nowadays, more than ever, being connected in real time is essential. Everybody wants to be able to do their work when and where they need to do it. And that's really what the Teams set of products gives us the capability to do. From a phone perspective, as I mentioned, we get a simple calling solution that's integrated into Teams. And we get a similar look and feel no matter what type of device we're doing it across. Doesn't matter what kind of calling system we want to use, we're getting a consistent experience. To give you an idea of what that experience looks like in Teams, when you add on the calling functionality, you get some important new features. You get a dial pad, so you get the ability to dial a phone number to make phone calls. Sorry, just having a delay with my slide. Apologize. You get a menu for that, so you get that button to be able to make calls. You see your telephone number being displayed. You see the dial pad I mentioned. You can see contact history and voicemail information. So you can see who you've called before, see who's called you, what calls you've missed, and of course, access your voicemail. And then you have access to your contacts for quicker and easier dialing. And then in the settings of Teams itself, you can manage call forwarding settings. So you can have Teams call forward to your cell phone if you don't have or want the Teams app on your cell phone. You can call forward to other telephone numbers if that's important. And you can set other calling priorities that go with the settings of what you want for Teams overall. Oops, sorry. Went a little quick there. So just look at Teams calling using a contact card. So the simple option there, you have a contact card in your contact in Teams. When you hover over that card, you see that there's a telephone icon. You click on that telephone icon, and now you're calling that person. Now, if you have two people in your organization that already have the Teams application, but don't have business voice, the telephone portion of Teams, you can already make these calls, computer to computer calls, because it's using the internet to talk between one Teams user and another Teams user, even if your system doesn't have telephone capability. So this is just Teams to Teams audio calling built into the Teams application. And that works across all of the Teams applications, whether it be on a tablet, a mobile device, or a PC. When you add in the telephone capabilities, that function of making Teams a phone system, then when you go to make a call, you have the option, of course, of calling someone in your contact by their phone number or by clicking their icon in the contact, but you also have the option of calling a phone number. And when you're calling a phone number, it's very straightforward that it's a phone number that you're calling, and you see that number displayed both when you dial and as the call is actually happening, and then you see that phone number as you're dealing with that call. So it comes up just like a regular Teams window, like a Teams meeting would, showing the information about the phone call that's taking place. Now, because Teams has the ability for multiple people, single or multiple people in your organization, to call each other from computer to computer, from application to application, once anyone in the organization has the ability to receive phone calls or make phone calls from a telephone, they can bring other people inside the organization into those calls as well. So I can transfer calls to someone else in the organization. So there's a new phone call coming in. It pops up in the bottom corner. You see it's a phone number versus a person's name, like you would see for a regular Teams icon for someone within your organization. And now you have the ability to, in Teams, chat with the person that the call might be for, to forward the call. This is how your reception would forward calls. You can chat first, you can just do a blind transfer, or you could transfer directly to someone's voicemail, depending on what is the best fit for that user. One of the great things of Teams is the presence functionality that's built into Teams. So when you log into Teams, because Teams is integrated with Office 365, your calendar in your email is known by Teams, and Teams is able to show you as busy or available based on what's in your calendar. So if you're in a meeting, you're red. If you have focus time set, you would show up as red. If you have available time, you would show, and you're at your desk, you'd show up as green. If you're away from your desk, you're going to show up as yellow, which is away. And reception can see that information before they make that decision to forward the call to you or to check if you're available. So really enhances the experience of availability for people to know whether they can forward a call to you or not. Whether you're doing a Teams meeting that is taking place with people within your organization already, and you want to add someone else who's in your organization, or add someone external, when you have the Teams calling capability, you gain the ability to be able to dial a phone number right out of a Teams meeting to add participants that you don't know if they can participate by Teams, and you can just phone them right out of Teams to add them into the meeting. So here we see a meeting happening between two people in the same organization. Alan and Adele are having a meeting, and now Adele wants to add someone in by telephone. So this is actually Teams audio conferencing. It's an add-on to Teams, separate from the add-on of making Teams your phone system. This is allowing your Teams meetings to be audio conferencing or telephone enabled. And this way you can easily call someone into a meeting external to your organization, or send out calendar invites to meetings with telephone information built in case people can't join the meeting or don't need to join the meeting from a computer and they want to be able to join from a telephone. And then there is the voicemail functionality of Teams. So with built into the Teams application, once you have Teams as a phone system, is the ability to receive voicemails. So when someone calls in, you're not able to answer, the voicemail automatically shows up in Teams. It would also show up in Outlook, and it's automatically transcribed. So you actually have the text-based version of the voicemail, and the transcription is pretty good. So if you're doing it via email, it's often easier to just read it than to listen to the message if that's faster and easier for you. Plus, if you forward it on to someone else, that transcription forwards on as well. So full voicemail integration. So what are the features of a phone system that's built into Teams? It has all the typical calling features you would expect any phone system to have. You can control calls, park, forward, transfer, delegate. There's call screening, call blocking, visual voicemail to email we just talked about, caller ID, one-touch calling, all of the expectations you would have of a typical phone system. And the administration is all web-based. You go to a web browser, you log into your Microsoft 365 environment, you go to the Teams Admin Center, and from here you control all the functionality of how you use Teams as a phone system. You set up your number porting rules, you set up your 911, you set up your auto attendance and call queuing if you need that. You can set up different kind of routing rules, set all of the rules and all of the settings for how your users are going to use Teams. And you're also able to see reporting, logs, metrics, and call quality information about how the system's performing. There's pretty robust auto attendant and call queuing built into Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Business Voice. So you can set up an auto attendant. That auto attendant can do speech recognition. You can do recorded information if you want custom greetings in your menus. Then there's detailed call queuing that can be based on first in, first out. It can be based on calling everyone. You can have the option to have people opt in and out of the queue. Supervisors can whisper or barge when necessary. They can chat with someone while they're listening to the call or participating in it from a training scenario. So lots of options with call queuing. If you need more advanced dedicated call center functionality, there are third-party add-ons we can bring into the solution that can provide more robust attendant functionality and more robust call queuing functionality. But the majority of organizations have more than enough capability just with what's built into Teams. Sorry, I talked about voicemail already. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the important concepts of Teams as a phone system, and one of the biggest advantages is it's an application. And that application can run on a multitude of different types of devices. And because that application can run on different devices, you gain that ability to use it anywhere, anytime. There's the desktop application that runs on a typical Windows, Mac, or Linux desktop. There's the mobile application that runs on tablets and then also runs on iPhone and Android devices. And then you can do it via the browser. So you can just utilize a browser at someone else's house to authenticate to your Microsoft 365 environment, go to the Teams application, the browser-based version of the Teams application, and still have phone functionality as long as there's speakers and microphone on that device. But you're not limited just to using computers to use Teams as a phone system. While that is the method a lot of organizations will choose as they move to Teams, because you don't have to have a desk phone, you have the option of having a variety of different desk phones, and you also have the option of adding a variety of peripherals to the computers to enhance the calling experience on the computer. I'm talking to you now on a Jabra speaker puck like this that is both the microphone and speaker that I'm using for today's meeting. And there's a couple of others from other brands as well. There's a variety of different headsets, whether they be wired or wireless. And when you're looking for any of these types of devices for a Teams environment, you want one that actually has the Teams logo on it. That way you know it's certified for Teams and it's a one-touch button to utilize Teams. There's also some very dynamic and different style devices that exist because of how Teams operates. In this case, we actually have what looks like a phone. This is actually just a handset. It's a dumb handset, and it has a headset option that doesn't by itself do anything. When you come to that desk that device is at, and you set your phone down, it makes a Bluetooth connection to that device. It also will wirelessly charge the phone. And it's actually the app running on your mobile device that is providing Teams. And this is just providing a traditional handset experience for that Teams application running on the mobile device. So again, great for environments that have desks that are used by multiple different users, hoteling or teledesking, whatever term you want to use for it. Lots of different options. There's a variety of Microsoft Teams phones. The physical format and layout of them is different, but the application is the same. It's a scaled down version of the same application that goes on an iPhone or Android. All the new Microsoft Teams phones, doesn't matter which provider they're from, whether they be from Yealink, whether they be from Poly, whether they be from Crestron, doesn't matter. They're all running Android, and they're all running that Android app that provides the Teams phone app experience. Whether it provides it with a video option, so that you can actually use this as a video phone as well, or whether it provides it as just a traditional desk phone option where you just pick up, dial a number. Of course, you can see all the other people in your organization and access your contact card to make calls. When you want to start expanding how you use Teams from a meeting perspective, or replace your traditional conference room phone when you transition from the phone system you have today, there are a variety of different physical layouts of devices. These two obviously very similar in that tripod style that a lot of you may have in your boardrooms or your meeting rooms today. The difference now is that one leg of the pod has that screen on it that gives you that same Teams app as the desk phone does. Crestron has one that's more of a square, so a different layout, different format depending on what you need in your room. Lenovo's come out with a really neat personal communication device that goes on the desk, usually an executive's desk. It can sit in portrait or landscape mode, and it is a video phone for Teams. Generally using a speakerphone, of course, it can Bluetooth connect to a headset as well if that's what's preferred for more privacy, and it lets someone join Teams meetings without having to use their computer to do it if that's what they prefer. This experience of giving you the same app, the same look and feel on any device anywhere isn't just restricted to Teams from a calling functionality, it's part of a Teams from a meeting functionality. So we're in a Teams webinar today, which is just a type of Teams meeting. And whether you join this webinar from your PC, from a browser, from the Teams app on a PC, from the Teams app on a mobile device, or from a collaboration bar or a room system in a room, you're going to get a similar experience across all those devices. As you expand your utilization of Teams, especially for the meeting experience, and whether you're already using it for meetings today or switching to using Teams for your telephone service as well, pushes a need to look at what are you going to do for conference calling inside of those conference rooms and meeting rooms. We have a variety of options for how we can allow rooms to join the meetings. We have collaboration bars that can be controlled by different desktop options, whether it be the tripod trio style or it be a little mini tablet for that purpose. These collaboration bars have speakers, microphones, cameras built in, and will suit all different sizes of rooms and start at pretty reasonable pricing. So you can set this up in a room and it can receive a phone call and just be audio only, or it can join a Teams meeting with full audio and video experience. You then have the option to step up to dedicated Teams room systems. These are the different control options that you would have, some form of a tablet with some sort of a PC that's usually attached to dedicated permanently mounted speakers, microphones, and cameras. Speakers and microphones usually being ceiling mounted, camera usually being mounted at the front of the room. Sometimes you go with a single camera, multi-camera, depends on the environment and what the right solution for the organization is. And this will provide for just about any size of meeting room or boardroom. If you want portability, there's even the Surface Hub, which is basically a TV with a computer built in that can mount on a wall, but there's also this portable stand with a battery pack option. So the Surface Hub with the camera, it has speakers and microphone built in. It's a 100-point multi-touch device. You also have a pen option if you want to be able to have the precision of a pen. You mount it on this mobile easel and you add on the battery pack, and now it can run for about 3.5 hours on a charge anywhere in your room, in your building that you have wireless access to. Same experience as any of the other devices. So because this is a hosted system, you don't have to go through a lot of work to set it up. It's running in the cloud. All you're really doing is configuring the pieces that are unique for your environment. You don't have to do the back end configuration. That's already been done for you or is done with our assistance as you set that system up. Now, the first question we often get asked by a lot of people when we start talking to them about Teams Voice is, well, I don't know Microsoft very well as a voice provider. Sure, Microsoft has provided operating systems and applications for a long period of time, and they've been providing web-based services for Office 365, but how long have they been in the voice game and telephone? And actually, they've been in that game for a long, long time. They're not really well known for it, but back with Office Communication Server, which then was renamed Link as it was relaunched in 2011, which was then renamed Skype for Business after they bought Skype, which is then fully integrated with Teams on the back end. Skype for Business, Link, and OCS existed as on-premise phone systems, a traditional PBX with telephones that were connected to it. It ran as a server in your environment that provided your phone system. So Microsoft has a lot of experience doing voice and doing telephone services. It's only with Skype for Business Online and Microsoft Teams in the last 4 years, 5 years, that Microsoft's doing a lot with voice in the cloud and a solution and service that can feed a large number of users consistently and reliably across multiple data centers. Microsoft is a leader in both the Gartner Magic Quadrant and the Forrester Wave of unified communication providers. This isn't something new to Microsoft. Like I say, they've been doing this for a long time and have a lot of experience in it. So how do you get there? I've talked about all this cool stuff you can do and Teams and what the components are is a little fuzzy probably at this point. So here's where we basically start. You need to have Office 365 because you need to have Microsoft Teams. And pretty much every Office 365 online plan includes Microsoft Teams. And you could be using Microsoft Teams today for meetings, for audio calling, but not the telephone portion. So to telephone enable Microsoft Teams, we add on Microsoft's phone system, which is basically Microsoft's hosted PBX. So it's the cloud-based PBX in the back end of Teams being provided by Microsoft. So you start with your Office 365 that gives you Teams, and you add on phone system. Once you have the phone system in place, now we have to decide how are we going to get phone line connectivity to that phone system. And we have two options. You can use Microsoft calling plans, where you get your phone line connectivity from Microsoft delivered into Teams. It's very similar to buying cellular calling plans. You also have the option of leveraging your existing telco and either having them providing telephone services into Teams directly for you, or you putting an appliance on site that provides that capability. So phone system paired with Office 365, which includes Teams, paired with either a Microsoft calling plan or direct routing gives you an entire phone system with telephone connectivity. So Teams becomes the telephone application that you're using, no matter what physical device it's on. it's talking to the back end PBX, the phone system, and it's talking to the telephone network, whether it be through the Microsoft calling plans or direct routing. So the structure is very similar to what you're doing today. It's just the primary component of PBX is hosted in the cloud. Deciding whether to do Microsoft calling plans or direct routing depends on a number of things. If it's reasonably easy for you to get out of, or you don't have an intense contract with your existing telephone provider, then the Microsoft calling plans are simple and easy to utilize. It's provided directly by Microsoft, supported by us and Microsoft together. You port your existing phone numbers over, which simply means you take the phone numbers that you have with your existing telephone provider today, and now Microsoft's aware of those phone numbers and is allowed to receive and send phone calls with those phone numbers for you. But there are some challenges to the calling plans that don't make them the right fit for every organization. Today, you might be on one of those calling solutions that I mentioned earlier that's like a PRI or a Sept service. One of the reasons organizations went to those services many, many years ago is their shared line services. So instead of having a phone line for every user externally, you have a number of phone lines. PRI channel might be 5 lines, might be 6 lines, even though you might have 50 telephones and 50 users inside your environment. Microsoft calling plans could be more expensive depending on that structure for you. And if you want to work with any on-premise phone systems that you want to keep, or you have an existing contract, or you want to have the option to not have to have a phone number and the cost of a phone number for every user, and it's something we would go through on a case-by-case basis what makes sense, you can use direct routing, which takes your existing telephone service from your existing telco and reroutes it to Microsoft Business Voice. So we start with Office 365 and the Microsoft Teams app, and then we add on Microsoft 365 Business Voice, which is the licensing that includes the phone system the phone system, and then audio conferencing, and then the calling plan or direct routing, whichever one fits your organization. So Microsoft likes to bundle things, so they've taken the cloud PBX, the audio conferencing, and the option of with the Microsoft calling plan or without the Microsoft calling plan, and they've put that into bundles. So they call that bundle Microsoft 365 Business Voice. So Microsoft 365 Business Voice at $22.50 per user per month is the cloud-based phone system, the audio conferencing with telephone enables your Teams meetings, and the calling plan, so the telephone line connectivity for your individual users to send and receive phone calls, all bundled into one license that you add on to whatever Microsoft 365 license you already have. If you don't want to use the Microsoft calling plan and you want to continue using your telephone services from your existing telco, then you can buy Business Voice without the calling plan. So you get the phone system license and you get the audio conferencing for your Teams meetings, and then we set up Teams to work with your existing telco in whatever way we can with that telco. A variety of different options exist, and then you would pay your telephone line costs to your telco as you are now. Of course, those costs might be different when it involves working with Teams. There are some rules. The Business Voice is designed for what Microsoft considers the SMB marketplace. So it's up to 300 seats. It's available now in the US, UK, Canada. Calling plans available for many countries. There is a free 30-day trial. I'll get back to that a little bit later. You can add on international calling. If you have users that do a lot of international calling, you can add on flat rate international calling, and you can add on something called communication credits, which is just a bank you build up of dollars for any long distance services that aren't covered by the base plan. So the base Microsoft calling plan provides so many minutes per user and services to so many countries. I'll get into that in a little bit. So basically what we're doing here is we're taking Teams that has the chat capability and the meeting capability, and the person-to-person calling capability that's built into Teams, Teams user to Teams user calling capability that we talked about earlier. We're adding on audio conferencing, and that's where you see, join Microsoft Teams meeting. When someone sends you a Teams meeting invite, when they have audio conferencing, you'll see telephone information. We're adding on phone system, enabling your team system to be able to send and receive phone calls, and then the calling plan to enable that. And then we're adding on communication credits for any of the additional costs that aren't covered in that base license for either the audio conferencing or that calling plan. So we add on audio conferencing to enable the ability for your Teams meeting. You can buy audio conferencing by itself. Some of our customers, some of you may already have this today. So you may not be using Teams as a phone system, but you might want your Teams meetings to be able to be used for audio enabling your Teams meetings or telephone enabling your Teams meetings, and that's what the audio conferencing is doing. Licensing calling, again, we add on the calling plan, we add on the phone system license, and we add on the communication credits. In this case, we bundled it together in the business voice bundle. The calling plan that is built in to the Microsoft 365 Business Voice bundle is 3,000 minutes per user per month. And it is pooled. So if you have 10 users and everyone's going to get 3,000 minutes, and you have one user that uses 100 minutes, and you have another user that uses 3,500 minutes, there will be no additional charges because there will be minutes of it, in the pool for the person that went over the 3,000 minutes. You can also then, as I mentioned, add on international minutes. So when you add on the international minutes, those are pooled as well, but only amongst the users that have those international minutes added to their license. The regular 3,000 minutes is for Canada and the United States. So we say US domestic, does not include Mexico. It's not North America, it's just Canada and the US. Calling Mexico is calling international, and then of course calling anywhere in Central or South America, and then calling anywhere on split by water is going to be a long distance international dialing as well. And that's where the communication credits come in. So whenever you're going beyond the total number of minutes you have, or you're doing long distance calls or international calls that aren't covered within that base 3,000 minutes in the plan, your communication credits are going to pay for those additional costs, as well as for audio conferencing for any toll-free services, and if you're dialing long distance out of an audio call, audio conference to call someone into a meeting. So that's where that bucket of dollars pays those communication credits. Just for reference, the long distance charges from Microsoft's calling plans are very low price and very competitive. Often your long distance costs will go down compared to the service you have today. We have a number of type of resource accounts that don't cost anything. They're virtual licenses. There's 25 virtual licenses that come out of the box for setting up phones for staff rooms, or you front reception area, you want a phone, like not for your reception, but a general phone for people to be able to use, a number of different service accounts that can be utilized. The Teams Admin Center is where you go and do all the management and administration of Teams. For the majority of our customers, we actually do the majority of this management and administration, but it is browser-based, it's quite straightforward and easy to use, and it is very easy to customize what you need to about the system for your environment. There's detailed call analytics and a call quality dashboard that helps you see what's happening and what's being done. So the call quality dashboard actually happens inside of Power BI, and you see detailed reporting, and then you can do necessary filtering, you can do geographical reporting, you can do a large number of different types of call quality and reporting information, understanding how your phone system is being utilized and how well it's operating. There's compliance recording built in. So if you have a need to do recording that you need to keep for compliance reasons, there's an option for that. There's also third-party add-ons that enhance the call recording options and how the call recording functionality works within the system. So lots of simple options for management and extending those management capabilities. Now, how do you implement it? What is the right migration strategy? And no one likes change. And one of the things people probably like the least amount of change with is telephone. Telephone should be simple and easy to use. They should be able to just pick it up and go. So we have to get people through that resistance to that change as best we can. The interesting part is in a lot of organizations, people may already be using other services besides the telephone system that you're providing them today. It's called shadow IT, and it's been going on more and more since the advent of the internet and more internet-based services that people can go and just purchase and start using. And the IT department really has no idea it's happening, and they have no ability to really stop it or control it. One of the benefits of the Office 365 / Microsoft 365 stack is we can use that to replace a lot of the technologies that people in your organization may have gone out and rogue and started using from a shadow IT perspective. So Dropbox or Jive, or if they didn't want to have to use their cell phone, maybe they set up some sort of other computer-based calling, getting everything unified down to one solution. And not everyone's going to be the same. Not everyone's going to necessarily want the Teams app on their mobile phone or even use their computer as their phone. They're still going to want handsets. They're still going to want a traditional device that seems more like what they're used to, but works within the Teams world. And then we don't want to just install the system and run away. It's important that we plan it, we pilot it, we go through the right necessary testing and setup for your organization, and then we ensure that you're getting the proper support after the fact. So there's two major ways to do the migration. There's a coexistence migration, where you keep your existing phone system in place, and then we set up integration with your existing phone system and Teams and run them side by side for a period of time, and then move everyone over to Teams Voice. Or there's the cutover migration. Cutover migration is we get Teams all configured and ready to go. Everyone keeps using the existing phone system, and then we basically pick a date and we move everything over. Everyone stops using the old phone system. Everyone starts using the new phone system. So it really depends on your organization and what's the right way to do that migration for you based on what services you're already using and what you want to be able to accomplish within a voice solution. So whether you're going with a cutover migration or the coexistence migration, the first thing we always start with is Teams to Teams calling. Getting Teams installed on people's computers, if people are ready for it, on their mobile devices, and getting people talking to each other on Teams. Gets everyone comfortable with the concept of how it works, how it feels, and it's very similar and easy then to start utilizing phone services. In this first phase, we leave all of the telephone capabilities happening on your existing phone service. In phase 2, we start rolling people into using Teams as the phone service. And again, depending on whether it's the cutover or the coexistence migration, determines the amount of users that are affected by phase 2 and phase 3, and how fast we move through phase 2 and phase 3. So it's all about how we're going to integrate or not integrate your existing phone system with Teams. And then at the end in phase 4, your legacy phone system is now removed and everything is happening through Teams Voice. And again, it's going to depend on your environment and what services you're using to determine what's the right cutover method and how fast we move through phase 2 and phase 3 to get you from phase 1 to phase 4. So from just using Teams for calling other computer users to using Teams as your phone full voice solution. So to get started, really all you have to do to be able to start using this is have an eligible Office 365 subscription. So basically any of the Office 365 subscriptions that include online services are going to give you that capability. Then you want to start getting everyone in your organization using Teams. And if people haven't been using Teams already, there's a number of ways we can help you getting people to start using Teams. If you've already been using Teams for meetings and chat and person-to-person calling within the Teams application, we can do a 30-day trial of Teams Voice or Microsoft 365 Business Voice, which adds on the phone system license and calling plans. Obviously, it's going to be with unique different phone numbers that runs at no cost for 30 days, so you can get a taste and feel for what Microsoft 365 Business Voice is like. And so if it's something that you are interested in already, we will, as thank you for taking your time to join us today, we'll help you set up that proof of concept. So not only will you get the licensing at no cost for 30 days, but we'll throw in a few hours of our services to help you get it set up and try it out in your existing Office 365 tenant. So if that's something you're interested in, that's something we can certainly assist you with without a problem whenever you're ready. And that concludes the presentation, really. That's everything that I wanted to cover, and I wanted to leave some time for questions. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, and we can take you off of mute, so you can ask the question over audio if you want to, or of course you can use the show conversation bubble up in the top of the Teams window, and you can type in any question you might have. So anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to go ahead. Some of the common questions we've had in the past have been, how difficult is it to port phone numbers? So if I want to move my PSTN telephone line connectivity from my existing telco to Microsoft, those Microsoft calling plans for Microsoft to be the telco. If you're in Winnipeg, it's super easy. If you're in or outside of Winnipeg, different parts of the province, phone number portability has different rules. Won't get into the details as to why, but generally speaking, within Winnipeg, Brandon, Portage la Prairie, the major centers, it's not a big challenge, but rural Manitoba can be a bit more of a problem for sure. Another common question customers ask is, well, if I'm going to replace my phone system, do I have to replace all my phones? And how expensive is it going to be to replace all your phones? So you can replace all your phones when you go to Microsoft Business Voice if you want to, and you can buy dedicated Microsoft Business Voice phones. Generally speaking, the majority of installations we've done, people don't give everyone a desk phone. People transition to using their computer and the mobile app on their mobile device as their phone. And then you remove the need for a desk phone for managing and supporting and keeping up to date a desk phone. But of course, you still have the option of having desk phones for those users that need it or that you want to provide it for. So we often, lower the cost compared to replacing traditional phones where you're buying both a PBX and a phone for every user. Now, there is some level of trade-off in the fact that in a traditional PBX model, you purchase everything. You buy the PBX, it's usually a one-time capital purchase. You buy all the phones, it's a one-time capital purchase, and then it doesn't cost you anything after that fact. With Microsoft Business Voice, you are paying to use a hosted service, just like your telephone lines today, just like cable, it's a service. So you're paying every month and you're getting access to use Teams as a phone system. So you transition from a capital cost and expense to more of an operational expense. The nice thing is operational expenses are usually easier to adjust based on your organization, your size, and what's changing within your organization. So that's one of the things that we very much like about Teams Voice and the flexibility that Office 365 provides. Question, do we have many healthcare-oriented institutions adopting the system? I can't think of one at this point. We have a dental office that's done testing and is just waiting for their existing contract on their existing system to move over. So that would probably be the closest, but not specifically healthcare or care homes. I don't see a significant difference necessarily, but I realize if you need to provide phone capability to users in their rooms, that's something that we have to discuss further because it's not quite the same as how traditional phone systems work. But there are some third-party add-ons that you add on to Teams that are cloud hosted as well that give that additional capability. Well, the reliability is going to be pretty high. I mean, the phones are no different than just about any other voice over IP phone system you'd see today. The phones themselves are Android devices. They're pretty reliable. The service is internet based. And one of the unique things about Teams voice running over the internet is it's not SIP based, which most voice over IP phone solutions are. And not to get too deep into the technical details of that, but SIP is designed to run on a local area network. It's designed to run inside of an office for multiple SIP conversations going on simultaneously. It's very susceptible to high latency and very susceptible to jitter, which are both things we usually see in slower internet connections. Teams voice actually runs over HTTPS, which is the more secure version of the protocol that web browsing takes place over, which was designed for the internet. So it's designed to be broken up into many little packets that get sent over not even a very large internet connection on a very regular basis. And so we find very good reliability from a voice quality perspective. Sometimes if you're in a Teams meeting and there's audio and video, you'll get some choppiness at times, but if you drop the video, the audio always gets the priority, and so the audio will always be better. And so from a Teams voice perspective, where the telephone connectivity and communication is voice only, it's usually quite reliable, even on slower internet connections. And on the back end, from a reliability perspective, you're gaining a level of redundancy that you likely don't have in your existing phone system today. There isn't a single point of failure in a single PBX because it's a hosted solution running across multiple data centers. Your physical phone at your desk isn't a single point of failure anymore either because you can run the app on a variety of different devices. So compared to most on-premise phone systems, you're actually gaining a lot more redundancy and reliability than you would have on a traditional on-premise phone system. Plus, generally speaking, a traditional on-premise phone system is being fed with telephone lines that are in the ground. Those telephone lines in the ground get cut or damaged or don't work, you've got no telephone. If those telephone lines in the ground are what's carrying your internet, you're not going to have any Teams voice on your PCs or on those handsets either. But you've got your mobile phone, which has the Teams app on it, which has cellular data and can utilize Teams over cellular data anywhere just about in the world that you can get cellular data. So again, you get redundancy not just in the back end, but you get redundancy in the front end that the end user is using as well. Oh, good to hear that someone had good experience using Teams with one of the phones already. So I'm glad to hear that. So yeah, I'll stick around for a couple more minutes in case anyone has any more questions. Please don't hesitate to ask. Oh, got a couple people typing. Let's give them a minute. Oh, thank you very much for enjoying the presentation. Yeah, PRI contracts can be a barrier. So the solution for that is that's where we do the Microsoft Teams, the Microsoft Business Voice without the calling plan. So you use the Microsoft PBX hosted in the cloud and use Teams as your front end device. And then we take your existing PRI, and right now it runs into whatever PBX you have in your office today. What we do is we put what's called a session border controller, which is a little appliance that would go, you plug your PRI into your session border controller, and then we set up that session border controller to send your telephone calls to Teams. And therefore your PBX isn't required anymore. So that's a way we can leverage Teams voice with your existing telephone contract, example, a PRI contract. So, and those session border controllers aren't very expensive. They range from $1,500 to couple, to $3,000, depending on how many PRI lines there are and what features you need. And they're pretty easy to set up. And once they're set up, and they of course be supported by us, you don't have to do anything in those SBCs anymore. It's just set up to be a way to reroute your PRI into Teams, and then everything from the end user perspective is Teams. They don't even have to know that you had a PRI. They don't care. It's irrelevant to the user at that point. So, and we have customers doing that already because of whatever existing telephone contract they were on. So they're utilizing that existing phone service with that appliance, that session border controller, to reroute all of their inbound and outbound calls through Teams. And we can always have a follow-up session where I can take you through more of the details of how that works and the functions that gives you. The other nice thing about putting an SBC in place is usually we can have the SBC communicate with the on-premise phone system that you already have. So it can also make that migration easier, or even potentially coexist, where you have some people that stay on your existing traditional phone system and some people that you move to Microsoft Business Voice if that's the right fit for your organization. Yeah, a very good point. The CapEx versus OpEx, the operational expense of having a phone service from Microsoft plus having to pay, Bell or MTS for your phone service can be a hard one to swallow sometimes. I mean, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can pre-buy your Microsoft services. You can pay for multiple years in advance if you want to treat it more like a capital expense, which some organizations choose to do. Really, you're just transferring the same expense. I mean, your existing PBX isn't costing you anything anymore today because you probably bought it and paid for it, but it cost you something a long time ago. When you take the telephone line cost and you split it out from the PBX cost, and you look at what that cost is year over multiple years, along with support services, Business Voice actually works out cheaper than a traditional on-premise phone system. So usually the cost benefit analysis is pretty easy, and the total cost of ownership is easier to prove out over time. No problem. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it very much. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or anyone else on the Broadview Networks team. And hopefully at some point we can have a conversation about getting you going with Microsoft Business Voice. Thanks. Have a good day.